everybody. My name is McFinn Levere, and you are right where you know you are, everything ALS. And tonight, we're going to have a little special program like, remember when you went to grandma's house and grandpa, and they had all of those things that mom and dad fed you when you were young because they got them from grandma and grandpa. Well, holidays are for families, and this is a big family that we got here. Sometimes we have 300 to 500 people in our family. So just remember, when holidays come up, we don't have to wait for them. Every day can be a holiday. But today, we're going to come up with some special foods that we say are holiday foods. But let me tell you, holiday foods sometimes are so delicious that they're actually good for you. And some of these recipes that we're going to be seeing tonight, they're going to be recipes that are fun to make, are fun to eat, are fun to share, and are fun to change. Because, you know, recipes are made by the people who make them, and recipes are eaten by us. And so we need to add our own special spices in there. So tonight, we're going to have some guests that are going to explain the intricacies of making food simple. It's like there's all kinds of food. Remember, there's emotional food, psychological food, spiritual food. And the holidays is a perfect time to share each one of those. So welcome to tonight's program. And if you find something that's really interesting, in 2 weeks, let us know exactly what you made up from what you heard this evening. So welcome, everybody.
Introduce our next presenter, Anne-Marie Wills, MD, MPH, is a neurologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School. Her research focuses on environmental risk factors and determinants of neurodegenerative disease progression, including nutrition, caffeine, and pesticides. Her multi-center clinical trial of nutrition in ALS showed that a calorically dense diet was better tolerated and led to fewer adverse events than a standard diet. And she has followed up this research with the Eat More clinical trial in ALS. She's also investigating the effects of exercise intervention. Research dietitian at Massachusetts General Hospital's Translational and Clinical Research Center. She's had the opportunity to counsel individuals living with ALS on nutrition through the Eat More study with Dr. Wills. So thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to have you all here tonight. And we'll have questions after your presentation.
That's great. Thank you, Deb. And I hope my audio is okay. That was a really nice presentation that I'm following. I'm going to talk about nutrition now. The background on this is I started to look at predictors of survival in ALS quite a long time ago, way back with my fellowship. And you know, it had always been known that people who were underweight, so having a BMI of, you know, less than 19 or less than 18 and a half had a worse survival. And it wasn't clear at the time if that was cause or effect, if there was people had lost weight because they were more advanced, or if there was something about weight itself or weight loss itself that really predicted survival. So I did this study, gosh, we published it now 6 years ago in the Lancet, where we took people who had feeding tubes and we were able to randomize them, and everybody was completely blind to what they were receiving because it was through the feeding tube. And so we were able to show that people who got a calorically dense diet, in this case, it was Jevity 1.5, compared to regular Jevity, compared to a high fat, high calorie diet, which is really used in just the ICU world. But so what we found was that the people who were on the Jevity 1.5 diet, this is the red line on both figures, really had the best outcomes. They had the best survival, they had the fewest adverse events, and they also had the best rate of change in the ALS-FRSR. So we were pretty excited about that. Of course, it was a really small study because it was really hard to recruit people who were advanced in their disease. So we did I should mention, what we think is going on is that when people are losing weight, they're not just losing fat. And bodybuilders will tell you this, right? If they diet, they actually lose muscle. They don't just lose fat. And so this is one of the problems, is that with ALS, you're losing muscle from the loss of neurons feeding the muscle, but you're also, if you're losing weight because you're not getting enough calories in, you're actually losing muscle from starvation alone. And so we think that because ALS, there's so many problems in terms of swallowing and getting enough calories in. And I've shown more recently that there's loss of appetite as well. And means that people are losing weight as the disease progresses. And it's not just because of the muscle loss of the disease, they're actually losing weight due to inadequate oral intake. One of my colleagues, Ed Kasarskis in Kentucky, did a really nice study in which he calculated exactly, using, this is one of these doubly labeled water experiments, he calculated exactly how many calories people need when they have ALS, and he created this free online calculator that you can go to on this website, mednet.mc.uk. Kentucky.edu. And so here, if you put in, your basic sort of demographics, your age, your gender, your height, that sort of thing, and then you put in just a few questions from the ALS-FRSR, you can calculate how many calories you actually need compared to how many calories people normally calculate that you need. So this is sort of like the Harris-Benedict equation you may have heard of, where it's just sort of a simple calculation of height and weight. This actually is a good number of calories higher than what people normally expect, what people normally think that they need. And so this goes along with what we think is going on in ALS, where people are actually hypermetabolic. They actually need more calories than you would expect, and that's contributing to this imbalance between the number of calories people need and how many they are taking in, and that's leading to weight loss. So, sorry. And this is just a screenshot of the calorie calculator. So you can use this for free anytime. Sorry, I'm just going to check what the chats are. So this is an example of the calculation. So this is sort of an average person, 60-year-old man. The key here is his Harris-Benedict would say he only needs 1,670 calories. But when you adjust that upward for what his ALS-FRSR score is, he ends up needing 2,500 calories. So it's a really big discrepancy. And this is, I think, a really nice tool that anybody can use. Again, is totally free and accessible on the website. And so I would encourage dietitians, if you're working with people with ALS, to use this calculator, and people who have ALS at home can also access the calculator. We've also created an app to make it easier to calculate your calorie needs. And we actually did a clinical trial at MGH, which was also a randomized trial. And Jamie was the head dietitian working on that trial, where we randomized people to counseling by Jamie versus counseling by Jamie plus an app. And here's an example. We actually gave people iPads so that they could use an app and calculate their calorie needs, versus standard of care, which in our institution, all the doctors and nurses tell people to eat more, to just eat as many calories as you want. So our standard of care people get more calories than most people do around the country. But what we did was we followed people over time, and we found that in fact, the people who were randomized to the app, so they were getting frequent reminders on how many calories they needed, actually did the best in terms of both calorie intake, that's on the right, and their ALS-FRSR. So it didn't reach significance, and we didn't have enough numbers to really, hit the significance that we were hoping for, but we thought that the trend was really promising. And so we followed this up with an app, which we've designed, which is free of charge, and you can download this for either Android or iPhones. It's in the iOS realm, and you can get this from your regular app store for free. And so this app contains the nutritional goals that we were talking about. So this is the Kaczmarski's calculator. It has a lot of tips that Jamie and Jane Hubbard had created for our trial. Tips in terms of getting more calories in, really, loading your food with calories. We have over 100 recipes in here. We have like 300 tips, so that we've got a tip of the day that goes to your app and reminds you how to eat more. And then we also monitor for swallowing problems, because we think that's really important. And then we also ask, if you want, you can share your data with us for research, and it is anonymous. But if you do choose to share your data, we ask if you can give us either your email or your phone, in terms of sending you messages to remind you to fill out the questionnaires. Couple disclaimers here. So the app does not, the app does not replace the information that you're getting from your healthcare providers. We prefer that people not use the app if they're having real dysphagia, if they're having real swallowing difficulties. They really should be working with a speech language pathologist in terms of their diet and how to make their diet safer. We don't want people who have diabetes or a history of heart attack or stroke to use this app. We're worried about the risk of weight gain in that population. And if you do have diabetes, the good news is that your insurance will cover the cost of seeing a dietitian clinically. So that's the plus side. The challenge with ALS is that it's not a covered indication for seeing a registered dietitian at most places in the country. So most people don't have access to a dietitian, which is why we created this app. And then if you do have allergies to certain foods, and then we would just ask you not to use those recipes. In order to download the app, you have to download the My Data Helps app. This is sort of the platform on which we built our app. And so this is a QR code that you can scan. And then it should take you to the My Data Helps app. And then once you download that app, you should be able to search for ALS nutrition to join the study, or you can scan this QR code again to join it. And I have a little website down at the bottom, which has just more, it's just, if you need to log in to figure out how to use the app, it'll give you some more instructions. And then once you do download it, it'll just ask you some basic questions about your ALS history. But it'll ask you those ALS-FRSR questions that we were talking about, and then it'll calculate what your calorie goals are. Once you do have your calorie goals, you can use it to update a diet diary. So if you're using, for example, an electronic diary that I really like is called BiteSnap. It's sort of like, it's like Shazam for food. You can just take a picture. Here's a picture of General Tso's chicken. So it identifies what you're eating just based on the image, which is amazing. And then it tells you how many calories it has. You just have to tell it what your portion size is. It can estimate like how much you've eaten of it. So if you download BiteSnap, then you can update your goals in BiteSnap using the calculator. And what we would recommend is that you also allow BiteSnap and the ALS app to sync with each other through Google Fit or the Apple Health environment. So if you allow your phone to access these apps, then they'll be able to sync really well. This is just how to sync your data with the health apps. If you do decide that you want to share your information for research, again, this is anonymous, you will be asked to do a couple tasks. So monthly ALS-FRSR, tapping tasks, phonation, and then we send you a reminder if it looks like you're answering some of these questions, like you really are having problems with swallowing or weight loss, then we will message you through the app. And so if you have questions, if you're interested in using the app, this is the email that you can get in touch with us. Mansi Sharma, who created all of those food videos that I think were shared before the webinar. She mans the phone number and the email address. And she'd be happy to help you if you have any trouble downloading the app. And some of the recipes that she recorded ahead of time, I think we're not going to be showing them today, but you can just watch them at your own pace. They were designed specifically for Thanksgiving, and three of the recipes are from the app itself, are included in the app. So I hope that this is helpful. This is something that we wanted to just bring to the community and just disseminate for free, just so people would have access sort of to a virtual dietitian. And I am going to now hand it over to our real dietitian, Jamie Gary, who is going to answer questions and also give you some information. Thank you.
So, hello, I'm Jamie. Thanks for having me. Like Jody, which great presentation by Jody and her group. I just want to give the caveat that I'm home alone with my 1 and my 3-year-old. So if any small people interrupt me or you hear crying in the background, I do apologize. But thank you for that information, Anne Marie. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. So I'm just going to dive in a little bit deeper to the nutrition stuff. And again, if anyone has any questions, obviously, well, I guess we're taking it from the end actually. So we're just going to go through some basic stuff. So similar to like what Anne Marie had already mentioned, our current research has shown that what we found so far basically is that people living with ALS tend to do better if they weigh more than those who are leaner. And specifically, research has shown that PALs with BMIs of at least 30 tend to live longer and have better qualities of life than those with lower BMI, namely those with BMI less than 19. BMI or body mass index is the calculation of your weight divided by your height. Most people, like a normal BMI is considered 18.5 to 25 would be considered healthy, and higher BMIs are considered overweight or obese. But we found that many people living with ALS tend to lose weight, and the more weight they lose, usually the worse off they fare. So the most important thing for people living with ALS is to at least maintain their weight, if not gain some more. And a well-balanced diet is essential to maintaining your weight as well as your body composition, as Dr. Wills mentioned, trying to preserve the muscle mass and also the body fat stores. So weight loss in ALS can be multi-causal, including from dysphagia, loss of appetite, depression, difficulty self-feeding, food insecurity, increased metabolism, as well as just the desire not to gain weight. And even though a lot of medical providers are telling people with ALS that it's beneficial to gain weight, still I have had a lot of patients, especially the women, who tend to tell me that they've spent most of their life trying to lose weight. So it's hard for them to wrap their mind around trying to gain weight. And sometimes it's also pragmatic. So if they want to be easier to care for, pals and their caregiver sometimes voice that they're worried that if the patient, the pal falls down, the caregiver won't be able to help them get up if they get too heavy. Or just pragmatically, they don't want to have to buy new clothes. The desire not to gain weight can also be related to wanting to maintain a sense of themselves in a situation where so many other things are changing. They want to at least keep their physical appearance consistent. So the general recommendation for weight gain is slow and steady, so aiming for about half a pound to a pound a week. And again, the main focus is on avoiding weight loss. And kind of going into the direction of what Jody was talking about, a lot of it's just maintaining self-care as well. So we don't want you to, I don't like making people stress out about their weight. Usually the goal is just to, again, continue to enjoy food. And I view food as something that should be for nourishment as well as for pleasure. So whenever it gets to the point where people start getting stressed out about food is when I try to tell people to kind of dial it back and again, focus on getting some enjoyment out of it. Try not to worry too much about it. And then there's usually tips we can go from there. In general, nutrition management in ALS, again, as Anne-Marie mentioned, it's really requires the whole group. So listening to your doctor, your nurses, really working closely with like a speech language pathologist, especially if there's any issues with dysphagia. Occupational therapists are like amazing as far as coming up with new tips and tricks as far as little tools you can use to improve the way you're eating. And physical therapists can also help you with your posturing to eat and strengthening. So overall, it's just a team effort. And then of course, a registered dietitian can help you do your calculations and help you figure out what foods to actually eat. So far, the research in ALS and nutrition, we haven't found that there's any specific diet that really helps with ALS. So our general goal and what we taught people for the Eat More study was just to keep it healthy, try to keep food from all of the different food groups, so including fruits, veggies, proteins, fats and oils, dairies and starches. So trying to make sure you have a nice, well-balanced diet, not focusing on any specific food group and trying not to cut out anything. So you can meet your nutritional needs either by eating your calories, using a tube feed, or doing a combination of the two. And again, choosing a tube feed is a very personal decision, but some of the times you might want to start considering it as if ALS is interfering with your ability to swallow either foods or fluids when your nutrition needs can't be met by eating alone, preferably before significant weight loss and before you have trouble breathing. Again, I do like to highlight that it can be used in combination. So sometimes, again, if getting a tube feed does seem to line up with your care plan, you might choose to get it replaced earlier than later. And that way you can use that. You can eat the foods that you enjoy and then maybe get some of your extra calories that you need through the tube feed, or just get your hydration that way. But again, I know it's not for everyone, so just throwing it out there. Few ways for gaining or maintaining your weight in a healthy way. So again, it's always nice when people tell you to gain weight, but again, I'd rather you do it with healthier foods. So some of the ways you can do that would be choosing heart-healthy fats. So one of the reasons I focus on fats is that they're more calorically dense than the carbohydrates or protein. So a little goes a long way. About 1 tablespoon, which is about the size of a thumb, is about 100 calories worth of oil. So you can add that up pretty quickly versus if you have, like, for example, broccoli, you'd have to eat like at least 2 cups or 2 fists worth of broccoli to get that. So yeah, it's just a lot denser. Some sources of heart-healthy fats would be your various oils like olive oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, avocados, olives, nuts, seeds, nut butters, fish, flaxseed oil, and even just adding that extra 100 calories, so again, about the size of my thumb worth of oil, can equal to about 10 pounds a year. The other way would be to focus on having more high calorie, high protein foods, and a lot of these overlap with the high fat foods as well, so kind of a double whammy. So again, those nuts and seeds and nut or seed butters, trail mix, beans, other legumes, yogurt, especially Greek yogurt has more protein, cottage cheese, milk, or any milk alternatives, and cheese. Again, I apologize, my slides are a little busy. I get a little picture happy. Working on gaining weight healthy weight also by making every bite count. So I want you to be eating at least the 3 meals a day, no skipping meals preferably. Some people do better with the small frequent meals. If possible, just try to take a couple extra bites at each meal. So if you are having trouble with appetite or having early satiety, just again, see if you can take one more bite at each of those little snacks. And so little bites throughout the day can just add that over time. I'm trying not to skip any meals, adding in some of those little heart healthy things. So again, maybe like a little handful of nuts here and there, granola bar, yogurt. Again, sometimes it's hard to eat enough food, especially if you don't have much of an appetite. So sometimes drinking your calories can be beneficial. So hydration is frequently a problem for PALS as well. So making sure you're getting enough water in, but you can also choose things like milk, 100% fruit juice. I'm always a big fan of smoothies. We have a lot of those recipes on the app that Dr. Wills was mentioning, and then choosing other things like even shakes. And then there's also like commercial beverages you can try as well. So, and I tend to default to saying like, make your own. You can control everything that goes into them, but I know that's not always practical. So sometimes if you're just on the run, some of the commercial products can be beneficial, and occasionally insurance will cover something like an Ensure or Boost. But there are some other commercial products out there like the Naked or Adwala, and there's a bunch of other ones out there that are made with mostly like whole foods, just blended up. So my take-home messages in general are just focus on the slow, steady weight gain. From what we've learned from using the app that Dr. Wills was mentioning, is that frequent reminders and encouragements really do help with nutrition status. So you might get sick of us saying it, but it does seem to help that every time we say keep eating or work on maintaining your weight, it can be beneficial just for that little reminder. Again, consider the early introduction of the feeding tube if it works for you. Again, just keep evaluating, reevaluating your nutrition status and work with your ALS team. So that will be it for my slides for now. But thank you again for having me here, and I'll stay on for questions. I'll give back the screen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wills. Thank you very much, Jamie, Gary. We are going to have Sarah and Zaid and Zoe take questions now, and they're going to come from the chat room, and there were some questions that came ahead of time, I believe. So, and also I just wanted to mention Zaid, he's one of our newer moderators, one of our new student ambassadors. He's also kind of a smoothie chef. He's been making smoothies for his dad, so he might even want to share some of his recipes. So, all right, Sarah, I'll give the floor to you.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you again, Jody. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Dr. Wills. Thank you, Jamie.
Well, Deb's kind of knocked it out of the park tonight, but thank you guys all so much for coming. This was wonderful information, both for our food and for our families. Just a little back on me, my dad passed away from ALS, so this is all very useful information, and I'm so excited to be able to share it. Our first question is for Dr. Wills. For patients that may be on an anti-inflammatory diet, caloric intake can be a little difficult. What do you recommend if patients are not able to eat gluten or dairies or any kind of sugar foods?
Yeah, actually, I think that's probably a better question for Jamie. But yeah, I mean, definitely, you can definitely do, smoothies with a lot of fruits and berries. That would be very, that gives you some calories, and it's also easy to swallow. Jamie?
Yeah, as you mentioned, so the anti-inflammatory diet can be a little interesting. You can still get a lot of the, like I mentioned, sort of the heart healthy fats in there. Like avocado is usually acceptable on the anti-inflammatory diets. Again, as Dr. Wills was just mentioning, a lot of the fruits and vegetables are also still okay. And some of the nuts and seeds. So it's definitely still doable as far as getting in enough calories. It just has to be a little bit more creative. think most fish sources are still okay. Always go back to like your just going out with other substitutions. But if you do mostly a vegan diet, you could do a lot of plant-based proteins. So again, your legumes, beans. You can still get your nice, well-rounded diet. A lot of the tips I mentioned should still work for them.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It was very helpful. And this next question is for Dr. Wills and Gary. So they were asking, does the caloric intake amount change over the duration of the disease?
Yes, so if you repeatedly do the calculator, you'll see that the actual calculated amount does decrease over time as the FRSR progresses, and so it's sort of a reflection of activity level as well. So as people's activity decreases, then they don't actually need as many calories. So yeah.
I'd like to just add to that. Yes, the calculator will do that for you. And then the best way, of course, of telling if you're getting enough in is basically just watching your weight, because there is the needs that we can calculate. But then, of course, unless you're on a tube feed where you're specifically calculating exactly what you're getting in, it's hard to know. Like, even if we say you 2,000 calories a day, most people aren't going to sit there and do the math out. So just tracking how much, like tracking your weight over time, can be beneficial. And sometimes other things going on, like any inflammation in the body, can increase energy needs, or if you are dealing with any sicknesses that are going on top of ALS, that can also increase your energy needs.
The next question is for Jamie and Dr. Wills, and it's regarding whether or not an ALS patient should consider taking an appetite increaser. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it might be helpful. It's never been tested in, a clinical trial, randomized clinical trial. I mean, anecdotally, people will use Megace, people will use, medical marijuana, and to help with appetite, and certainly appetite is an issue, and so, overcoming that appetite loss might be helpful. I can't say that everyone should do that just because we haven't really done a clinical trial.
Great detailed answer. For Dr. Wills and Jamie, again, what types of calories specifically are most important? I know you mentioned a well-balanced diet, but is there one, proteins, carbs, fats, that you see as need to be higher than others?
I think overall it really is the balance. Our culture tends to put a lot of focus on protein, which protein is important, but there isn't any research that shows that PALs need additional protein than other people. And most Americans are getting too much protein in their diet in general. Again, that's not to say that people shouldn't still be getting protein in. I do tend to focus a little bit on fat, just because it is, again, a little bit more calorically dense and tends to be good for as far as getting in some more extra calories there if people are having trouble with their appetite. But also, as Dr. Wills mentioned, they did do some studies looking at, for example, the tube feeds with the high fat versus the like high carb tube feeds, and that the high fat is less well tolerated. So really, I think it's about getting balance. And again, I know people always want to hear something more exciting and zippy, but getting the balance. So I usually recommend about 50% carbs, 20% protein, about 30%-ish fat. If that helps.
So our next question is for Dr. Wills. So they were asking that 0.5 to 1 pound weight gain a week, but up till what point? So they were asking if the goal BMI would be 25 or something different.
Yeah, so actually in the observational data, the ideal weight, like the people who had the best survival actually had a BMI between 30 and 35. So actually really quite high. We don't recommend that you push yourself that hard. As Jamie said, we're going for, slow and steady weight gain. But we are trying to get people to be a little overweight, have a little extra.
Dr. Wills, in your presentation, you talked about Jevity 1.5. Is there any other tube feed options that you recommend? And is the 1.5 caloric standard your recommendation for tube feeding amounts?
Actually, Jamie, do you want to?
Sure. So Jevity 1.5 is one of the most standard tube feeds, and especially since PALs do need higher calories, we usually go for the more concentrated versions, so like the 1.5. There are a lot of other options out there, and again, it sort of depends on a lot of tube feeds wind up with a lot of abdominal symptoms as far as gas, diarrhea, things of that nature that kind of come along with the territory. I was reading in the chat, but yeah, people can put other things down the tube. In the medical field, we're really highly discouraged from putting anything besides a tube feed down the tube, other than water as well. But I do need to know a lot of people who try to make their own formulas, or there are some of the more natural-based formulas. I think one's just called like real food, and it's made from shockingly real food instead of all of the other additives. But yes, usually I think the standard like Jevity 1.5 is a good one. It has fiber in it, which is beneficial, especially since a lot of PALs wind up with constipation, so that's important. And it has a good macronutrient breakdown. I think I saw in the chat someone else said they were taking the like ISO 1.5, which is also similar to Jevity 1.5 and should provide a good mix as well.
Thank you for that. So our next question is also for Dr. Wills. So is there a location to find other recipes like the one that were already shared besides the app?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. To find what?
So is there a location to find other recipes like the ones that were shared besides just on the app?
Yes, actually, the ALS Association has a website. It actually has a PDF that you can download that has dysphagia diet recipes. I'm going to see if I can pull it up and share it through the app, through the chat. You can keep going. It'll take me a little while. Sorry.
I actually think that was our last question, unless somebody posted another question in the chat, so we can definitely wait for that because that is a good source of information. I know Zaid has made many smoothies himself, so if he has any ones that he would like to share, he's able to do so while we wait for these dysphagia diets.
Yeah, so since my dad has had ALS for a while, we've been sort of experimenting with different tube feeds and smoothies and stuff of that nature. And on our Lulge ALS Foundation page on alsheroes.com, I've compiled some sort of different meal plans and smoothie recipes and tube feed recipes. I can put the link in the chat if that's helpful. Yeah, so if you want to take a look at that, that's great. And I think Dr. Wills is going to include a link too.
Attached it. It's als.org, navigating ALS resources, high calorie, easy chew recipes.
Breakfast, soups, a couple of main dishes.
And if you click the just the hyperlinked titles, then it'll take you to the actual recipes. Yeah.
Our presenters for coming on tonight. This was a boatload of information that I'm going to have to reread some and re-listen to some of it myself. but we are grateful for their time and their expertise in both nutrition, food, family, and everything in between. All these links will be included in our resources page, so we will be able to share them, as well as information on how to download the app. I will make sure that we can include that too. And we want to say happy Thanksgiving to our Everything ALS family. You guys are very near and dear to our hearts, so we want to thank you, because you're the reason we're here. So we're grateful for you spending your Wednesday nights with us. And we hope that even in the midst of COVID-19, everybody has a blessing and good Thanksgiving. Again, so we will move to our open forum session. Everyone will be able to mute themselves, and McFinn will take it over like he always does, and see how everybody's doing and what they thought about these presentations.
And what an evening to see all of you here tonight. Did anybody come up with anything that they felt was personal to them that they have in their lives that they could share with us about their diet or their